this year, right? Grandma was serious. Like, Grandma shut the blinds, everything. She's like, I am not going. And then my mother called me, and my mother's like, is it the white people at work? Trey, is it the white people who told you this is okay? Is it the white people? Talk to mommy, Trey. Talk to mommy, please. Right? Right? And I could joke about it now, right? But my family just went crazy. Right? Grandma was booking flights to bring me down to Jamaica because somebody had work. Obia. You guys know what's up. You know what's up, right? The Obia. When they start talking about Obia, you know what's going on. White person, that means just like superstitious. How do you explain Obia? Black magic. You know what's up. Okay, right? You know what's up, right? That my family weren't having it. They were not having it. So they went through all of these extremes. And my grandmother booked a ticket and pretended like she wanted to take me to Jamaica. And my brother gave me the heads up. He was like, don't go. Grandma has a bush doctor down there. They're going to wave all kind of things. They're going to give you some bush tea. Don't go. You won't come back. Right? They were convinced. They were like, don't go. And my mother was like, oh, Trey, Grandma wants you to go to Jamaica. You know, Grandma always has too much luggage. Just go with your grandma. And I knew what was up, right? So I said I wasn't going. So when I said I wasn't going, then my family went into we are going to freeze her out approach, right? So I remember calling up my grandmother, and my grandmother was like, I would be like, hi, Grandma. Grandma? Grandma! I am not here. Seriously, Grandma? I am not here. If you are a gaze, I am not here. Grandma, stop talking to me. Stop talking to me, right? Whole family stopped talking to me for at least 2 years straight. 2 years. I'm not making this up. And I can joke about it now, but I truly do believe this was my calling. Because I hit rock bottom, because I was always like the shining star of my family. Everyone loved me. I was my grandmother's favorite. I was my mom's right arm. And when your whole family turns against you, right? It really makes you really evaluate like what you're going to need to do with your life. And people always say to me, oh, you're so brave and you're so fearless. But I always say to people, I only became brave and fearless after my family stopped talking to me. Because that was the lowest I could ever go, right? That's really, and I started to write The King from that place. And I remember writing because I was in pain, I was hurting, and so some of the monologues deal with like some really serious, heavy stuff, right? But because I'm also a comedian, I made sure that the monologues dealt with heavy stuff, but I also put my comedy in there and everything else. And so there was one thing I read one day that somebody said, your test becomes your testimony, right? And that was one of my biggest tests, because I always say to people, if I never came out to my family, if I wasn't estranged from my family, if I didn't become my authentic self, I would not be standing here today. I would not have the success of The King or anything else. It came from a truthful place. It came from a raw place. It came from a hurt place, right? And it came from this authentic place, right? And I truly believe that was my calling, is to be really standing in authenticity. To be standing and saying, this is who I am. Either you love me or you don't, right? This is who I am, right? And there's some things that I've learned along the way as I wrote The King, right? That I remember when I wrote The King, people always like, oh, well, it was this success. Yes. The King now has been seen in Toronto by over 150,000 people. It grossed over $8 million. It was extended like 5 times. It's been seen all over the world and everything else, right? But that's not how it started, right? People are always like, oh, you're playing. But I remember when I first wrote The King, I put it into the Toronto Fringe Festival, right? And I remember going to the Toronto Fringe Festival meeting, right? You guys know about the Fringe, right? Like it's this independent festival that you put your play in, and you know, they have about 150 acts in there that year. And I remember they had like a press conference, right? And the person, there was like a publicist of the Fringe, right? And I was sitting in the room, and I was the only person of color in the room, right? And I'm sitting there, and I remember the publicist, there was a whole bunch of us sitting here, and he would go, your play, we're going to get you on the cover of this. And your play, we're going to get this, and your play. And then every time he came to me, he would skip over me, right? And I was like, oh, is this a racist moment? No, maybe not, but okay, right? And then he'd go, and your play, and your play. And I remember going, what's going on? And I've always been, as my mother would say, feisty, right? Feisty, right? Kind of a little bit feisty, a little bit edgy. And I put up my hand and I said, excuse me, sir, what are you going to do about the kink? And I remember this. Anytime people want to shut you down, right? Anytime you hear these words, especially you young man, because you're going to hear this throughout your life, right? I'm going to tell you this. Anytime you hear this words, this is what the guy said. He goes, historically, and in my experience, the fringe has not been kind to people of color. And historically, black people do not come out to the fringe. And historically, white people who come out will not be interested in seeing a play about 5 black women at a hair salon. So historically, this doesn't seem too good for you. And then he said, and I remember this, he goes, if you get 10 people out to your play, consider it a hit. And we were in the 75-seat theater running for 7 shows, right? And this guy was telling me that if I got 10 people, consider it a hit. And I give you this to tell you that sometimes people will give you crap and expect you to just take it and go, oh yeah, right? And the other thing that I've learned along the way is that people do not want to do their jobs because it was his job to be my publicist, right? And I remember my grandmother used to say to me, and this is one thing that I always listen to my grandmother, even though she thinks I don't, right? But I do listen to her. I remember my grandmother said to me, if you want to have the life